Hello everyone. So this video is about creation of a virtual machine and how we can create a virtual machine on Azure cloud platform. So either for creating a virtual machine we have multiple options, but this video is subjected to using the Azure portal for creation of the virtual machine. So what we'll do is we'll start off with first visiting the Azure portal. When you visit the Azure portal using this link will be available in the comment section. You need to have a subscription. First of all, that subscription can either be your enterprise subscription, that is your company subscription, or it can be a personal subscription. It can be the pay-as-you-go model, or it can be a free subscription. In order to avail the free subscription, we need to have a particular credit or debit card associated with your subscription. So you will get, for 1 month you will get around 15,000 in terms of 15,800 credit in terms of your Indian rupees, and once 1 month is over, it will lapse. So when it comes to virtual machines, a virtual machine is actually infrastructure, right? So basically underlining that is your virtual machine, not a physical machine. So it is kind of part of your infrastructure as a service, you can say. So when it comes to AZ204, this is virtual machine I'm trying to learn because I'm trying to give AZ204, and now this is going to be kind of a learning path which I'm going to follow, and this is kind of a uh, natural learning which I'm going to showcase via this videos. So alongside you guys, I'll be also learning few other things in the videos itself in front of you. And in the comment sections, you can even help me out with my improvements and also other ways, and also any information which you have on a particular resource which I'm trying to configure, or a particular way or approach which I'm going to uh, learn about. So what we'll do is first go into what particular section does this Azure VM fall under. So when it comes to Azure VMs, VM falls under EZ204 Implement Infrastructure as a Service. When you talk about infrastructure as a service, that means you are consuming some kind of infrastructure from Azure provided by Azure, which is basically cloud infrastructure provided by Azure, and simplest form you can say is kind of a computer itself. Your virtual machine is kind of a computer which is in some uh, remote location somewhere else on cloud under Azure data center, which you are trying to use. Now, basically, what is the purpose of using your Azure VM? What is the purpose of using VM? So VMs, depending upon whatever is your ask. So you can either use VMs to deploy your application. You can either use VM to host your database. You can even use VMs to do some kind of batch processing, and you can even use VMs for NoSQL and big data kind of processes. So these are some of the usage of VMs. But if you even want to go through what is the exact use, and how you are supposed to have the design consideration when you're trying to have your VM configured, like what purpose needs what kind of design consideration when you are trying to configure VM, or you can go inside the section and find out very well, like what is suitable VM for us. So when you start an introduction phase is just basically what are the points which are going to cover, that is of like general importance. You'll get it step by step. So when you talk about the second section, which is your Azure explore Azure virtual machines, then when you try to explore Azure virtual machines, it will explain you about what is the purpose of the virtual machine. So here, first of all, it is like deploy and test. Azure VMs offer a quick and easy way to create computer with specific configurations and required to code and test an application. That is fair enough. That is what I've already explained. when it comes to the second one, applications in cloud, because demand for your application can fluctuate. It might make economic sense to run it on a VM in Azure. You pay for extra VMs when you need a shutdown. So for example, if your application is some application which is hosted on a physical server somewhere else, you're paying for a physical server which you have, and you're paying the amount of money which you're paying to the physical server is like too much, and you want to reduce the cost but still keep your content, keep your applications working enough, and also approachable for any kind of enhancement depending upon the audience which it is going to serve. So you can use VMs for that. VMs can, again, you can add VMs, and you can even close VMs whenever you want. So that is what they have mentioned in this application cloud. Extended data center virtual machines, Azure network can easily be connected to organize. So basically, hybrid cloud. It's hybrid cloud. Virtual machines in Azure virtual network. Basically, some machine is present in Azure, some VM is present in Azure network, and you want to connect that VM with your particular physical server VM. You can even do that. So these are kind of points which are mentioned here. But when you move on, they have given few design consideration for machine creation. That is availability. What is the availability of a VM? Like how much do you need it to be available? Like continuously work available, or is it going to be for a particular period of time? That is the point over here which they have stated. VM size, then again, VM size is again dependent on what kind of purpose is your VM serving. So for example, if your VM is going to serve just for the hosting an application which is uh, not really that high performance and high demand application, then it is okay to use general purpose VMs. And if your application is basically some kind of database, again there is a separate section for that specific set of VM sizes that you can use. And if your uh, application is actually something, your purpose is actually something which is like a big data transaction, no SQL, and huge amount of data is to be used, then there is a separate VM size which you can use. So that is what they have put up in the next section, VM size. Then VM limit, how many VMs. So this VM limit is something which I'm not entirely sure of, but whatever they have stated, it's like 20 VMs per region. Current limit per subscription is 20 VMs per region. So basically threshold on some kind of VMs generation per region. You can raise a support ticket to extend that VM. But mostly when you're trying to explore and just learn through is it 204, I don't think so. You're mostly bothered about VMs because you're just going to create 4 or 5 VMs at most if you're trying to learn. So this is like something which is VM when it comes to organizational level and region wise how many VMs you've created. So VM image, again, this is a very very good important point, because again, what kind of underlying in this you want, platform you want. So basically this, whatever I am using right now, my PC itself and my operating system is Windows, and there are different operating systems. You can say there is Ubuntu, you can say there is again Linux based. So the VM image is basically what is the underlying, what is the lowest point, like what is the OS in layman's term. You can say what is the OS which it is going to have if you want to relate to something with respect to your current PC which you are using. So like what kind of image are you going to use? Windows image, Ubuntu image, Linux? That's the case, and there are multiple versions of it. So Windows Server 2019, Windows Server 2022. So there are different kinds of there are multiple sets. So you can even find out the image lists by running this command. So again, when it comes to more points, there are VM disk. The disks are again important when it comes to storage. So how many disks have you mounted on your VM, or what? How many disks your VM needs to properly function? So you already know that like two types of disks. One is HDD, SSD. It's SSD is like high performance, flash quickly. HDD is like standard thing and cost effective, which you can use most of the cases. So that's the thing. Then again, when you move on premium disk and standard disk, there are differentiation within the disk they have given. Standard SSD, HDD, and your premium SSD and normal standard SSD also is there. More description over the disk itself: managed, unmanaged. Managed is the new type. Unmanaged is the previous type. Managed is something which you directly give your size for your disk. How much is the size of your disk, and then depending upon that, it will configure. And scale, you can scale out when there is more need of content or need of actual disk size. Again, when it comes to virtual machine extensions, we all know that virtual machines have different purposes depending upon the purpose. We will have our disk and we will have our image. So when it comes to extension is again a helping point for you to actually perform that purpose. So for example, I want to make my VM as some VM which is going to host my application and run. So whatever is the suitable extension for that VM, for that purpose, we are going to put into our VM, and that extensions you can add on when you are configuring the VM itself, or you can add on later also as per your requirement. So that's one again point which they have discussed over here. Yeah, for Linux machine VMs, Azure supports cloud init across most Linux distribution that supported and works all over. So Uh, so extension wise, Cloud Init is one kind of example which you can see. It is extension. You can read through this Cloud Init. Even I am not sure entirely on Cloud Init, but we can discuss it in the comment section or even in person. You can contact me and we can have a brief chat about it if you have more idea on this. So this kind of an extension which can be used for Linux VMs. So here the entire section is basically purpose of your VM. Then what are the design aspects which you will consider when you are trying to configure a VM for your purpose? Then suitable extensions that you'll use for your VM depending upon the purpose. Now this is again a better option, like some option which is very good. Now in terms of availability zone and availability sets, when it comes to availability zone, we all already know as per AZ900 what are availability zones, so I'm not going to focus more on this. But just consider availability zone is basically you have a VM in one kind of availability zone, and if your VM is having a set configuration like VM subnet and other important points which are generated when you configure a VM, you will have a replica of that somewhere else that will be a backup of your particular VM. So in case of your failure in that availability zone, that VM is compromised in some sense, you will have that backup available, and that backup you will have to like that will automatically it will be switched to that particular backup set when you're talking about a failure or compromise. So these are the two, like availability zone usage. One is basically your backup, and availability zone is basically again your grouping of all of your resources which you have put into a particular zone region. Now it consists of again fault domain, update domain. This fault domain, update domain. What is fault domain and what is update domain? A fault domain is basically the same explanation which I gave. One is the one standard VM which you create. Second is your replica set, or a backup set which is available. In layman language, I will say the backup set which is available. In case of this compromise or failure, this will be made available to you. When it comes to update domain is like if your particular this VM is going some kind of updates, internal updates, and it is supposed to be available 24 by 7. So in case of that, there are different sets of configurations which are made available in the backend that will be switched when there is. So for example, your this VM domain is getting domain, or your settings are getting getting updated. So this will update, then this is also getting updated, but your third one won't never update. So there are multiple such replica sets, and if one particular setting is getting updated, then second one is getting updated, there will be always one particular set with that will be available. So if you even read through this, an update domain is logical grouping underlining hardware that can undergo maintenance and reboot at the same time. As you create VM within the availability set, the Azure platform automatically distributes your VMs across these platforms. So that is distribution of that underlining hardware update continuously, you can say. So it is exactly distributed within the availability set. So if you have a availability set, you will have distribution of your VM. In case of your update, then what happens is at least one instance is always available on the platform, even if there is an update going on the other instance. So that is in terms of reboot or any kind of maintenance activity. Then when it comes to availability sets, in general, when you talk about availability sets, here the definition they have given, not the kind of a definition, but the explanation which they have given is availability set is a logical grouping of VMs that allows Azure to understand how an application is built and provide for redundancy and availability. Availability set is composed of two additional groupings that protect against hardware failure and allow updates to from fault domains and update domains. So set of VMs that are grouped together. You can say set of VMs that are grouped together. And when it comes to an application being hosted on VMs, if your application needs node switching, if your application is like switching nodes between two VMs, set of VMs, you need a load balancer. So they have explained about load balancing here, but even I'm not completely sure on this. We can discuss on this if required, but this is generally that only. If your VM has to be load balanced, one VM to another VM, load shifts one node to another node, and depending upon your application again. But here, when you are talking about AZ204, I don't think so. You are going to explore this. I can be sure on that, because load balancing, if you want to have it, then it becomes again you should have an application which is having high amount of requirement with respect to traffic, and you should have load balancer in place predefined. Then you can apply it to a particular VM set, to one or two VMs, and then load balance it accordingly. Now, in the next section, as I already discussed, VM type is again dependent on what kind of purpose you are having. The general purpose, there is development, testing, medium, small database, rural web servers. Fine. Compute optimize high CPU memory ratio, traffic, web servers, network application, batch processors, and application servers. Well enough. Memory optimized, this goes for database, high-end database. Storage optimized, that is again if you want to have some kind of NoSQL, big data, high big data transactions. GPU, this I'm not sure entirely, but it will have a good graphic rendering and other things. Deep learning they have put up here. Deep learning they have put up, but I would like to know if one can use GPU for your gaming. VM GPUs for, so for example, you create a VM and you use it for gaming. So how is that possible? That also I like to know. If anyone has any idea on that, put it in the comment section. We can discuss on it. Then moving ahead, high performance compute. High performance compute is again a faster and powerful CPU virtual machine through network interface. RDMA, even I'm not sure. Let's Google it. What do we mean by RDMA? Remote direct memory access is a technology that enables to network a computer to exchange data in the main memory without relying on procure caches. Oh, network computers to transfer data, relatively new to me, but yeah. Again, they have discussed VM resizing, how it can be done. Then they have given by using virtual CLI, but we are not going to do this VM generation using CLI. What we are going to do is we are going to do VM generation using Azure portal. Then in the next video we'll go ahead and do VM generation using Azure CLI. Then in the next video we'll going to make Azure VM using PowerShell. So three things we are going to do for the same VM, like same resource itself. So when it comes to making VM, I already have a free credit in my account. I'll just close it. That is, this notification will let you know that you have free credit. Whenever you purchase any kind of resource, this value will decrease depending upon how is the costing going. For the costing, you can refer to AZ 900, how billing and all happens. And when you actually use a resource and configure a resource, some amount will reduce depending upon whatever is the content which you have availed. That is basically what is the service which you have consumed and what is the configuration of the service which you have consumed. So now moving ahead, when it comes to virtual machines, what I'll do is I create a resource. I'll click on create a resource and then I'll go to virtual machine. Now it automatically gave me free trial because I only have free trial. I'm using a free trial one. Then when it comes to resource group, I have no resource group associated with my account as of now. So I need to create a resource group. So now coming to the resource group, what is a resource group? So if you want to consider this as a bucket, in that bucket, for example, you have a project. Let's name that project XYZ. And for that XYZ project, you need to have multiple resources from Azure. You're going to use multiple resources from your Azure. So basically, XYZ project, whatever resources you are going to use, are going to go into that bucket, XYZ resource group bucket. So you need to give a name for that particular bucket. And the resource group basically is a grouping of all the resources in your Azure, which you are going to configure that for the particular purpose or particular project. So now my resource grouping will be based on AZ204. Whatever I am going to learn about AZ204, I am going to have like a grouping over there, like grouping for that purpose. So what I'm going to do is right now I don't have a this resource group. I'm going to create a resource group. I'll name it this. The name is available. Make sure your name is actually available. AZ204 learning I've given. I'll just click on OK. I've got one resource group created. Now virtual machine name. Now virtual machine name. Again, I'm going to create three different virtual machines. So that's why I'm going to give a different name every time I'm going to create a new one, because so I have to differentiate it. So basically, the virtual machine name. Even if you want to check what is the naming this, why do we name more information, you can hover over this eye icon and it will help you out. So what I'll do is I'll give EZ204 VM, then portal. This name is again available, EZ204 portal. Then availability options, again this is what we have discussed already. Availability options, no infrastructure redundancy required. In case of failure, have a different replica set, and that replica set will be switched over in case of this VM failure. So that is one which is, I don't need any kind of such things, because it's not a application or a enterprise related VM. It's just something which I'm trying to learn. So I'll keep it as it is, and I missed out region. Now region is very also interesting thing. So if you want to use a specific region for your entire resource group, you can stick to a specific region and try to configure everything over that region. So but in free trial, it depends what region you can use. Like I'm not sure on the entire region availability, but few of the regions will be restricted for the free trial. So what I'll try to do is I'll use East Asia for this, and security type standard, again basic level security. Then under the, when it comes to image, I've already told what we need to do for the image. So what are the images actually? So if you are able to see, there are multiple types of images. Even if you want to explore all the images, go to Azure Marketplace, check what kind of images are available, and you will find them. So now what I'm doing is I'm just sticking to this Windows Server 2022 Gen 2. That's the latest one. Then VM architecture, again ARM or x64. Then run with Azure spot discount. This again, I'm not sure. We need to read through about this. Standard sizing, again, or what sizing can we do? So sizing, according to the sizing, it is giving me the value. But I, what I'll do is I'll just reduce the sizing because I don't want to spend my entire money on this even if I forget. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this B1 this B1 S2. This one I'm going to use. Now when it comes to B1 S2, it is 913, but its RAM is 1 GB, data disk is two disks, and virtual CPU is one. This is the one which I can use. I'll try to deploy an application over this VM and check if it works out. But once when you can't check, considering 1 GB of RAM, it is like the processing is bit slow and everything hangs up. Because I've already previously experienced when I was trying to explore through like what happens, but it was completely hanging up. So I'll use this 1 GB again and try to check if everything works out. Or else we can, if I'm going to anyways make to another two VMs, so I'll choose a different option for that altogether. So I'll just select this, then username and again password. This is also again important when you are considering username and password. So what I'll do is I'll give a username. Okay, I considered a username and I'm going to give this username. I'll save it somewhere probably. I'll just save it. You make sure you guys save this, because if in case you forget to save it, then it becomes very difficult for you to actually log into the VM. Because any kind of logging, you are supposed to have it saved. So I'll just quickly save this. Okay, I'll just quickly save this. I've got a password also. I've given the name also. I've given the password also. So now I don't need to explicitly give anything. I'll just save it. It is important that you save it. I'll just note down my password and user ID, because otherwise, if I forget, then it will become difficult for me to again use this. Okay, so I think I've saved it. I'll re-enter the password and see. It's a tricky thing. Why is this not working now? So this is again a different thing altogether. Just check your caps and all. caps and other sticky keys and all that. I'll just turn my caps on and off. Yeah, now it will work. It will completely. So yeah, now when it comes to public, now when we move on, when it comes to inbound ports, public inbound ports, we need to have these ports because we need to connect to the VM. So either you can connect with the RDP, and if you want HTTP, HTTPS, you can open those two as well. Because if you want to connect to a specific domain URL for this, again, this needs to be enabled. And RDP is like you want to log into that VM uh, using remote desktop. Just we'll just move on. I've seen all the content from the first side, and when it comes to disk, again, disk you have to check what is premium SSD. It is using premium SSD. I don't want to use premium SSD. I want to standard SSD. HDD standard HSD because it is HDD because it is not a big performance wise. Performance is not the point of view for this creation. So I'm just going to use HDD. Then key management, platform manage key, enable ultra disk compatibility is compatible with zone of games. No. And data disk for this. You can even add your separate disk over here. Attach the particular disk and size also is available to add. That's kind of a custom option. And this OS disk again, types we had, multiple types we had. So this types SSD again fast, standard SSD still comparatively fast compared to standard HDD. It's kind of backup and non-critical infrequent access. So I am not going to use this as a like all through and through VM for hosting anything. Just normal one application I'll deploy and check if it works out. Then you move on to networking. Then if you go back again, I won't move. You see, manage disk. So this was like new option compared to unmanaged disk. So if you read through it for best performance, reliable scalability, you can use managed disk. Then you are next. Virtual. Okay, so your virtual machine is supposed to be part of a virtual network, and that virtual network will have a virtual machine, and you will connect to that network either outside from outside of that network, or you can connect by logging into that virtual network. That's again a point. So this is a configuration for that. It has auto filled everything, so I don't need to mostly do it. Subnet again is declared. Public IP. This public IP is again you have to check this public IP. You have to check what is the public IP for this. So if I use a public IP address, if you want to communicate to the virtual machine from outside of the virtual net. So basically, if I try to even log in through put the IP over here, I should be able to reach this machine, virtual machine. That's why it is a public IP is available. Allowed selected port is fine. NIC network security grouping. So again, this security grouping of your network structure, how transactions will happen with respect to your IP and your virtual machine, basically. I'll select this public IP and NIC when is deleted. Enable accelerated networking. This I am not sure. Load balancing again. We had discussed load balancing. I'll do a next over here. Management again. Enable system assign management identity. This we'll do using for this app. This particular VM itself we'll do using AZ. Sorry, no. AZ CLI, Azure CLI, or using PowerShell we'll try to do. Login with Azure AD. I don't want logging with Azure AD. Auto shutdown, enable auto shutdown, no. Backup, I don't want backup. Enable hot patch, no. Monitoring, boot diagnostics, you can even have the boot diagnostics like the, the particular information about booting and how it can be passed on somewhere. Like it use this feature to troubleshoot boot failures from a customer image, boot diagnostic with the manager, so significantly improves creation time on the virtual machine by reusing storage. So again, I'll keep it as it is by default, whatever's there, because I'm unsure of this, but I'll read through this. But you can even help me out in the comment section. Then advanced, I don't want to install any extensions as I discussed. I'll do it manually if I need to later. VM applications, again, I'll go into the VM and then install applications if required. So, or services, custom data, user data, no, no host, no host group, no. Proximity, all this I'll just keep it as it is default. Then we move on to tags. Again, tags is very important. This will be AZ 204, no, this will be VM type. This will be VM type. VM type I'll put as AZ 204 portal. AZ 204 portal. I'll keep it as it is. AZ VM 204 portal. This one tag I'll add and then review and create. When I go to review and create, it will give me subscription credit applied over here and what all things you have actually set up. So it's taking time, but hopefully it running final validation. Let's wait for this and see. Yeah, validation class. If I scroll through, it will give you all the information which are configured here. Tags, they have created a tags entirely VM type. Everything is applied with the VM. Every service which is created as part of this VM creation is again applied with the tag. So I can identify either by resource group. All the things will have only one same resource group, or either by my VM type tag, VM tag basically. Whatever I put in here. So I'll click on next. Next, why is it not moving? I have to agree to the terms. Okay, I have to click on create. I forgot there is no next step here. Every notification is available over here. I don't want to save this. So it is deployment in progress. Once the VM is created, we'll move on how to create via CLI and then how to create via PowerShell. And once those all things are done, I'll try to update anything with respect to the VM using PowerShell and CLI itself. I won't go manually come here and update it. So, for example, when you talk about updating, there are a few sections which I told already that we are going to update it later. So we'll be addressing that only, and we'll try to check how the update works and how the commands and all work through. So let's wait for this to complete and then we'll wind up the video. We'll see how it works out in the next video for Azure CLI. It takes a bit of time to complete because it is again going to create all kind of resources which are associated with the VM. So if you check security groups, public IP, virtual network, network interfaces. I closed it. Now I think we are done. If you go to notification, it's still in progress. If you can click on this and check again, closed by mistake, so you can come back and check the creation complete. Once it is completed, it will show you the information of the creation and complete data which is required. Yeah, so I think we'll wind off this video. We'll see how to create a virtual machine in the next video using Azure CLI. Azure CLI, yeah.